Ladies and gents, welcome back to the Sets and Reps podcast. This is your life. This is your lifestyle. I'm your host, Greg Gadanian. And this is a very special episode. I get to sit down and talk to my friend, Ryan Phelps. He is a classmate of mine. We're both in the PTA program. That's physical therapy assistant. We've both been loving it so far. We are going to begin our careers in a couple years after we pass the boards exam and get licensed. Heck yeah. But we are going to be working alongside in a partnership with physical therapists in treating the needs of patients, all kinds of patients, all kinds of pains that they're dealing with, all kinds of injuries and function-related problems, impairments, functional limitations. That's what we've been working through so far with this year. This semester just ended. At the time I'm recording this introduction, it is several weeks after this podcast was recorded, and it's currently winter break for the holidays. So we've got a couple weeks off here. It's been a really good time to just kind of chill and debrief after finals. I took 4 finals, did pretty well in most of them. And the next 3 semesters, because this is a 2-year program, the next 3 semesters are going to be pretty insane. So I'm ready for it. And come whatever comes, the only way is through. Am I right? So on today's episode, we basically cover all different important aspects of an athlete. Ryan played football in college, so I get to hear his experience working with the team, and he also has been playing football since a very young age. And so we use that to kind of take a look at what some important skills are for adolescents as they, play multiple different sports and they figure out what they want to focus on and pursue. What are these important skills that they need to develop now that will make them successful in college? We also talk about injuries and the increase in overuse injuries in the younger population, and how it's also really important to balance sports and education. We also talk a little bit about the stigma of youth and weightlifting and how a lot of people make the claim that it stunts their growth. I'll just want to let you know right now, I'm a big advocate. Of course, I'm a personal trainer. I'm a big advocate of lifting weights and weight training. And even the younger folks can do it. Doesn't matter. As long as your technique and your movement is optimal and you do it with a fitness professional or someone that knows what the heck they're doing, you should be all right. And you don't have to just do machines. So that's my take on it. We talk a lot more in detail about that. And just in general, we kick back and have a good time because both of us have some leeway or some pull in this area. Of course, I mentioned Ryan has been an athlete pretty much his entire life. And I am a trainer, and I've had a lot of experience working with youth athletes. And I know some stuff, and I want to pursue that more and follow through with it as I develop myself in my profession and in my career. So without any further ado, I say that every episode, and I might keep saying it until I come up with a more intelligent way to segue. This is Sets and Reps with Ryan Phelps. I hope you enjoy. This is an audio-only podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Very warm welcome to Ryan Phelps and my guest today. And very warm welcome to all of you returning to Sets and Reps. I've had a lot of fun with this so far. First of all, how are you, dude?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me on. I was really excited when you talked to me about this and you were toying with the idea of doing a podcast in general. But yeah, I'm stoked to be here. I'm pumped to talk about our topics today, see if we can get anything productive done, but we'll see about that.
We do have a lot to talk about, and we do have a tendency to not get anything done. I know that because Ryan right here is one of my classmates. We're both going through the PTA program. That's a battle in and of itself, huh?
Yeah, man. I mean, but we have some great classmates, and
we do.
Yeah.
We've been striking at that so far. Not striking out, but just kind of putting in the work, building a little bit of the wall every day, a little bit at a time. Some shout out to Trump, and also shout out to Will Smith there. Did you watch the fight, the Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. fight by any chance?
Yeah, I saw some bits and clips. Unfortunately, I didn't get the pay-per-view because I was otherwise occupied with other activities, but saw some highlights, and I don't really agree with the ruling personally. I think Tyson kind of won that fight.
I think so too. He was very powerful and just going after Roy. Still, and I was just like surprised for his age, and just that's very good, you know.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say for like a 53-year-old guy going up against a younger opponent. I mean, I say younger; he's still also in his 50s, I
Do you know?
believe.
I was gonna say, do you know how old he is?
Yeah, but I mean, for the difference really is like Tyson's last fight was what 15 years ago, and Roy Jones was maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. So
okay. So yeah, he's a little bit more refreshed.
Yeah, he hasn't really lost his edge yet, but it seemed like Tyson never lost it either. His training did the trick and got him right back into fighting shape, as one would say.
Right. I mean, I didn't see a lot of the training videos, but I know he was going off, and it's a draw, right? But they're not going to come back and do another match because this was just a one and done type of thing.
Yeah, it was for charity. It was for a good event. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what charity, but I mean, if anything's getting done for charity, it's probably a pretty good cause. So,
Googling it real quick. I'm straight up Jamie here. I'm a combination of Joe Rogan and Jamie.
Young Jamie Rogan, dude.
Young Jamie. It's not going to tell me.
That's all right. But did you also? I saw the clips of the other fight, which actually ended up being a little more exciting with was it Jake Paul and Robinson?
That lasted like 3 minutes, maybe 5.
Yeah, and
crazy.
Robinson got slept, dude.
Okay, so he pretty much one of the rounds, didn't they have to end it early or something? One of the rounds, I think, right before he was knocked out, I just remember maybe I'm wrong, but I thought they had to like end the round early because he was like too tired or something. They had to reset. I don't really know what the rules are.
Yeah, I didn't really see that. Like, I don't really remember off the top of my head either. But those celebrity fights always have some interesting rules, but they definitely bring a crowd because for some reason, people in America and around the world as a whole really enjoy seeing celebrities out of their comfort zone and doing wacky stuff.
Absolutely wacky for sure, including coming out in a bathrobe, just completely decked out. That's like in boxing world, that's being badass, right? Just walking out in your digs.
Yeah.
Do you think boxing is something that is like other college level boxing teams? Do you think?
So I think it's yeah, there's definitely a lot of amateur fighting. Like I think like Golden Gloves is like a program that a lot of fighters go through when they're going up in the ranks, and I think it's also like on a timetable. Like I think when you're a young boxer, a lot of their main goals is to like try and get into the Olympics and do boxing for their country. And then after that, since you have to be an amateur to participate in the Olympics, so they're like, oh, I'll get that out of the way first, and then when I'm older, I'll be a professional boxer. So that's usually the way it goes. Like I believe Muhammad Ali, back when he was still Cassius Clay, that's what he did. He went through the Olympics, and then he went professional boxing, and then also changed his name to Muhammad Ali, and that's the name that everyone knows today. And he's obviously one of the greatest prize fighters that's ever lived, and there's no contest with that.
I was watching some of his highlights the other day after the Tyson match. I went back and watched some of Tyson's highlights, and then I watched Muhammad Ali's highlights, and they never fought, right? I'm obviously
no, not at all.
I don't really know what the overlap was between when Ali stopped Because Tyson was probably a lot like really young
Yeah, I mean, I
around the
think
time Muhammad Ali was fighting, right?
yeah, Tyson was a kid and he didn't really, I think he was like hitting his teens in like the 80s. And then like when he was 19, he became like a phenom, or when he was really young, I believe it was around the age of 19, he became, was on like covers of magazines. He's like the next big thing in boxing. And then from like the late 80s to 90s, he was just an unstoppable force and an absolute beast. Like he's just an incredible human being. He's faced adversity. He was really raised in like a cauldron of interesting topic, like not interesting topics, rather like just interesting situations. Like his home life was very not great, and he had a lot of difficulty and adversity to face at a young age. And I think that really helped like mature him and turn him into the man he is today.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, dude. And 19-year-olds before our generation were built different. Like, just
Well,
like
that must have been that that HGH the government was putting in our milk or something. I don't know, man.
they still are probably. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't
think the
drink.
big thing is they had to like. Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I don't drink milk.
Yeah, no, I'm not a big milk guy. I can't swear off dairy though. I mean, cheese and obviously my little secret pleasures once in a while with some ice cream. But
True. I got that frozen yogurt, mint chocolate chip bar in the freezer. It's pretty good. Not gonna lie.
Those are pretty good, man.
But like, have you seen pictures of like Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was 19?
Yeah, and I think
like that's crazy.
Yeah, and I think the thing is with like the difference in generations is like people, even like 20 years ago, they had to grow up in a much different world than we did. They had like a lot of different things to face. I mean, from like, the end of World War II to like up until 89, like they were living in a constant threat of, the whole world popping off during the Cold War. So like, stress and pressure and, just growing up differently, like different like social like rules and expectations, different ways to grow up. Like, growing up then you were expected to, have a house, a job, and a family by the age of like 25. And now it's kind of like there's a whole lot more that we have to do, and the world's just a different place. So I think they had to grow up a lot faster back then, and their bodies responded to that accordingly.
That's crazy. That's super cool. Definitely our kids these days probably aren't cut from exactly the same stock, but some of them you can just tell, like when you see them, that they just got those freak genetics when they're younger. And genetics does play a huge part in that, especially with athleticism, at both the college level and the high school level. But we see it pretty early on.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty evident when you look at the rookie classes going into like the NBA and the NFL. I mean, if you look at DK Metcalf, he's 22 years old. I just turned 23. I'm a month older than him, and he is a very different human being than I am. He's massive. He's 6'4", 200 plus pounds. He's an animal. Like, he's just an absolute freak of nature. And, he and I don't look very similar, as you know very well. I do not have the same physical stature as DK Metcalf.
You did once have some athletic range in you. You played in college, right? What?
That was a good time.
Tell me a little bit about your experience. Like, what were you? You were playing football, I know.
Yeah. So
your position though, what your position was?
Yeah. So in high school, I kind of did a little bit of it all on the football field, and did a little bit in lacrosse. Wasn't really my main sport as football was, but going into college, I actually had the benefit and luxury to be part of an inaugural team. The college I was going to, the University of New England, they hadn't had a football team when I went there, and then as I was progressing through my freshman year, they started one up, and so I was kind of one of the bricklayers of that foundation for that team, and it was a great honor. I had a great time. I ended up bouncing around a bit there too. Bounced around from like running back and then outside linebacker on defense, and then I played a little bit of a defensive end depending on the scheme. Did a lot of special team stuff as well. When you're a a young team and a small team, I mean, we were growing every year in numbers, but a lot of the times you have to kind of bounce around when you have a smaller team and do your part in multiple positions rather than just specialize in one.
Interesting.
But
Did that like damage your performance at all if you weren't able to hammer and focus on one position because you knew you were going to be in multiple?
I mean, so the biggest switch was offense to defense. I'd played both in high school, so I'd kind of had an idea of both. But that was the biggest thing because I just switched playbooks completely. I had to switch from offensive playbook to defensive playbook. But like playing two different positions on defense, really, the techniques that you use in like the moment on the playing field are different, but there's also a lot of similarities and also a lot of similarities in responsibility. And as you're learning a position in one, like as you're learning, say, outside linebacker, you're also learning the other positions because you have to have a good understanding of what they're doing so that way you can do what you're supposed to do and also you don't get in their way and they don't get vice versa, they don't get in your way. So
Right.
it was really chalk it up to the coaches. They were really great guys. But yeah, no, it was a great time. I had a good time. Unfortunately, I had to I didn't finish on my 4 years there, but it was still a good time and a really good life experience. And I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad I learned a lot from it.
What was your? Do you remember if your team was really good as far as standings go, like compared to other colleges in the area?
Well, a lot of the difficulty, when you're into a new program that's just starting up, you're working out a lot of kinks and you're figuring out what your team's culture is going to be and who's proficient in what area, because you're getting a lot of kids. Like when you have a new team, you're getting a lot of kids that are they're really good players. Already know they're going to an established program at a high school. And I mean, I wasn't the best player, I wasn't the worst player, good enough to play in college, as I've said. But it was really difficult the first like couple years I was there. We didn't really. It was more of like a 500 team, I'd say. We did all right. We didn't really move too far in the standings, kind of just middle of the pack. But yeah, it wasn't a great team. It wasn't the worst team, but it was a great group of guys, and a lot of them were learning. And the biggest thing is we were all really into we loved football, and we were also really big into the weight room and stuff. That was one of the biggest things at that school that was cool. Was it was like a sports medicine school, so we had a whole wing of a building dedicated to athletic development in terms of athletic training for recovery and strength and conditioning for like a weight room and all that stuff.
That's super important, and that's awesome that the school had that. Was their gym wicked nice?
Yeah, no, it was state of the art. I'd say the gym was probably one of the top gyms in the country. I mean, I even argue like against like some schools like Alabama and Georgia and Texas and all those schools. I mean, in terms of volume, like those schools definitely have larger gyms, but in terms of quality of equipment and quality of space design and utilization of different techniques, we were right up there with them on par. Like we had probably about 14 squat racks that also counted for like that were adjustable for bench, and there was deadlift platforms built into the ground with reinforced steel plates underneath. And we had turf. We had like 25 30 yards of turf and sleds to push, and we had a bunch of free weights. Obviously, of course, free weights are huge and important to working out. There really wasn't a single like isolation machine in that gym actually, except for maybe just like certain things to work on, like really small accessory muscles that.
Or like a leg press, maybe?
Not even. I don't even think we had a leg press.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was all traditional Olympic lifts and free weights. That was the director of the sorry to go off on a tangent. The director of the sports applied exercise science department. He that was his big thing, was free weights and body control. And he actually he's very illustrious career. He used to personal train for a couple presidents, like both Bushes and because they have a spot out in Kennebunk, which the school is located in Biddeford, so it's like right down the road.
What's this guy's name again?
Um, um, Let me try to remember. I think it's Heath Pierce, I believe is his name.
That's interesting. Never would have thought about personal training for the president. Maybe that's a niche market. I don't know. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I mean, it's a pretty illustrious job, I feel like, and you're not training, NFL athletes or NBA athletes or any professional athletes, so a little bit of the pressure is off in terms of results. You're just kind of more looking for longevity and overall well-being.
Can you remind me who Tampa's baseball team is?
The Tampa Bay Rays.
So one of my new coworkers, he's a part-timer at the gym, and he came from working with the Tampa Bay Rays. I don't quite exactly remember like what he did. I think maybe he was some kind of assistant coach. But that's kind of a cool
Yeah, that is very cool, man. I
fun little
mean,
fact.
honestly, that's everyone's goal, I guess, in terms of or most people's goals in terms of like sports medicine or sports fitness is that's like the highest tier you can really get to is being a part of a professional sports organization.
It was interesting. He came from doing that to a small little health club in Milford, New Hampshire. I guess that's what COVID will do to you, relatively.
Yeah, man. I guess that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes,
You played in high school, right? Was that the first time you played sports, or did you play before that too?
Sports have always been a huge part of my life. I started playing football in like the second grade. Most people would rather see a non-contact sport that young. I tried baseball and t-ball growing up, and it just was a little too slow for me personally. And a lot of times parents want to put their kids in flag football, but I was lucky enough to where my parents decided that I was, mature enough physically. I mean, even in second grade. I mean, we're talking second grade, so fifth, 6, 7 years old, 8 years old.
You were
I don't
playing
know.
football in second grade? That's crazy.
Yeah, man. I played up until I was 21, 20 years old, and I didn't pick up lacrosse until about high school. Unfortunately, I didn't even know it was a sport until like the 8th grade, which is kind of a tragedy because I think that sport is like the most like the sport that provides the most freedom of expression in terms of like a person.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Freedom of okay. All right. What kind of things are just like personality?
So it's a really of course I'll elaborate on that. That's a pretty general term and a big claim,
Yeah.
but I
No,
mean,
I'm just interested. I've
yeah, no,
never really heard that
so
before.
it's very free flowing in terms of the game pace, and a lot of it's fluid movement, and every player can put a little. I mean, as in any sport, the players can put a little touch on their own personal way they play the game, but it's a really relaxed and obviously it's still an aggressive sport, but it's very relaxed, and you can really flourish in terms of like how you perform, and it's fun. Is what a big thing is you can is it no matter how big the game is and how crazy the score is or how close in the game is, you can really just you're still out there having a good time with the boys, and it's just it's hard to explain unless you've really been into it, and
Right.
I'm just not the best person to explain it, but it's just that's what I got out of it.
It's awesome. What can you close compare it to, like football, but or like hockey?
I'd say hockey and even a little bit of basketball, because basketball you can obviously have a lot of expression as well, but the passion that hockey players have, I'd say, is like really close to how you can express yourself in lacrosse. I mean, every athlete has an enormous amount of passion, but when you see those guys on the ice, it's hard to argue that they don't love what they do every day.
Yeah, and it's also a sport that requires a lot of power and like transferring that power obviously to their sport specific movements. And it's like I read today that basketball and lacrosse are kind of like in the middle between like the most power output. Um, I saw like basketball and soccer is like more towards the top, but and sports like baseball are more along the lines of strength development. Did you say?
Yeah, I agree to that. Like, there's a lot of transfer and power and stuff. The biggest thing I have to say is like you learn like those sports you do so well in basketball and or at least lacrosse you do so well because you play other sports. Like my high school team, there was not a single kid on that team that only played lacrosse. Like we had, fall athletes, winter athletes, and lacrosse, at least in New England, is it's a spring sport, and as well as in most of the country. But we had kids that were transferring skills they'd learned in basketball and soccer to the lacrosse field, and obviously I transferred some of my football skills as well to the lacrosse field, and I really think it created a more well-rounded team, and it really brought a lot of different personalities because I'm sure, as you know, like certain sports tend to harbor certain personalities in terms of like how they act and how they go about life, and it was a real good group of guys.
That's awesome. Yeah, I guess having multiple different sports as an adolescent is kind of like a blessing and a curse, right? Like we've got a lot of benefits that probably outweigh the risk, but like as you said, they make a more well-rounded team if an individual is playing multiple different sports and they develop these skills that can transfer to different ones, these movement patterns. And then it really helps them to streamline and focus on what they want to pursue through college. But I'm sure, but it also can lead to like overtraining, and there's a lot of other factors that you need to take into consideration, like the athlete's recovery outside of all these different sports and how they're spending their time. It's a big one.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that I'd say about that is yes, there's a lot of overtraining, but it's training different areas. And I mean, obviously, you're always, working your legs in any sport. There's always movement, but you're training in different directions. Like, soccer, it's always very lateral. Same with basketball, and lacrosse is an extremely lateral sport. Like you're moving side to side at diagonal directions. And football as well, but football is more of like a north-south like running scheme. I mean, there's still obviously, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of lateral movement as well, but there's
Football's
not
more of a top speed sport, right? Like
yeah, you're trying to get somewhere as fast as you can, as fast as possible, and sometimes that's not always beneficial in other sports, and that's what makes them different and makes them all great depending on which one you're playing. But yeah, man, it's really interesting to talk about how they differ, but also how they relate and how you can benefit in one sport by playing another.
Do you remember when you started weightlifting to help you for your sport?
Yeah, actually. So I was playing for one team in my area, and then I switched to another team, and that team had access to the weight room at the high school I ended up attending. And that's when I really started my weightlifting career, or habit or hobby or lifestyle choice. It was probably around middle school, I'd say 6th or 7th grade. So I started pretty young. And at first my parents were really concerned about, because as everyone says, and there's a big conversation about it these days, is how young is too young to start weight training.
Yeah, that's one that I hear. I actually heard it once from one of our professors, and it was just interesting to hear a physical therapist say it. I don't know. I don't know that there's a lot of like research that supports any risk that outweighs the benefit. Like we can get into all that. I mean, the biggest thing is to make sure that if obviously I'm sure you had people supervising you that knew what they were doing when they were lifting with you. That's the biggest thing that's important.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to kind of go into more was I think the biggest thing too is differentiating between like powerlifting and bodybuilding type lifting styles versus like actual certified strength and conditioning coaches that are there to kind of teach you the way. And I'm not saying I had a personal trainer, a certified strength coach at that age, but they didn't just focus on how much can you squat, how much can you bench, how much can you deadlift, and they're trying to put as much weight on your body as possible. They were very much in tune with the mindset that you should be, you should bench, squat, deadlift, all the traditional like movements and the Olympic style lifting. But if you're not going to do it the right way, you should not go up in weight. You need to master that technique first. And also you need to, pair that up with working accessory muscles, because that'll help you with your bigger lifts, and also working on like functional movements. And at that age, I didn't really understand why they had us do all this stuff, like working with ladders and doing all this stretching. And, when you're a kid, you're like, I just want to lift, and then I want to go play football, or I want to go play basketball. You think it's kind of boring, but you do it because, most of the kids do it because, their coach says, well, you need to do this, and this is what we're going to do today. But
yeah, they need to be educated, not, just to know that all of these things are going to benefit them in their sport. It's going to directly relate to their sport. Like, they need to have the stability to be able to do a lot in a state of constant like stress.
And I think the biggest thing too is a lot of the times when they're teaching these kids how to exercise and weightlift and fitness, there's not really an emphasis on like teaching them how to be functional in life as a whole. They're trying to improve their skill in that sport, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But, I think that I saw a statistic the other day. It was out of the NCAA, and I think they said, hang on a second here.
Take your time.
Yeah, sure, man.
One, I seek knowledge. I'm sure the listeners, they can wait.
Yeah, right.
If anyone's listening.
I'm sure they're listening to you. I don't know why they logged in if they saw me on the thumbnail, but
you just got you have a marketable face. I'll make your face be the cover of the episode.
Oh, thanks, man. That's too kind.
Yeah, dude.
Shit, man. Where is it? I had the notes somewhere, and now they're disappeared. But anyway, it was from the NCAA, and they said that it was like less than, I think, 5% of athletes in high school get a scholarship for a college team. And so that's and considering that there's I actually do have this one, but there's 60 million kids in the United States that are between the ages of 6 and 18 that are playing organized sports, whether on an individual level, like say if they were doing swimming competitions, or they're on a team level like basketball or baseball. And so, by the time that 60 million, reaches 18, they're, only less than 5% of that's getting into college in terms of getting a scholarship for a sports team. So when you're in high school and even middle school, I think there's a real importance on teaching these kids how to, obviously you want to have a successful sports team that, that'll really help a lot of kids in terms of like mental health and also physical health, of course, but teaching
building confidence, building team building and building team building, but like building the agreeableness and the collaborative.
Yeah, being like cooperative and also a lot of leadership skills. Like there's a lot of like opportunities and as you grow to take leadership positions in sports teams, like being a captain or being like a leader on the team. If you're not necessarily the captain, you're, being the example for your peers in how to act, not only in the weight room, in the classroom, on the field or on the court or in the pool, whatever sport you're playing. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I was reading an article the other day, and they talked about how, using INT or integrative neuromuscular training, as the basis, or not as the basis, as a supplementary exercise to the training programs that you'd use to train athletes.
Kind of having uh, a mental training component alongside the physical training component.
More or less, it's a conceptual training model, and it's actually defined as a supplemental training program that they try to incorporate like general, like as in fundamental movements, and specific exercises that are targeted towards your motor control deficits, and then obviously strength and conditioning activities as well. Like you'd be using resistance training, dynamic stability, like core focused strength, and plyometrics, and doing agility based training. So you're really designed to enhance like health and skill related components of physical fitness, rather than just going for bigger, faster, stronger. Like these are techniques that are like making a more well-rounded individual. So you move in a as a physical therapist assistant, like as we're learning, you're trying to move in the most efficient way and safe way possible.
That's right. No pain and injuries. Yeah, get rid of the no pain, no gain movement as well, because that's semi bullshit.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, man. I mean, I guess you can take some pieces of that. Like
Sure.
obviously, like you need to understand the difference between being injured and being hurt. Like, sometimes you got to push through some sore muscles, but you need to also understand that, the difference between having a sore muscle and having a torn muscle. They're very different pains, and you shouldn't work through one. And I'm sure we all know, and the listeners would definitely know which one you shouldn't be working through, but
absolutely. Yeah, we see that a lot with, I mean, like especially with some of my clients, my younger athlete clients, like we'll talk about injuries and stuff that's bothering them. And if a particular movement especially is not working in that instance, we won't do it. But there's just like, they're talking about like all the different sports teams that they play on, how many practices they have per week, and then they're coming in and training with me. And it just gets me thinking about, how the potential for injury is severe, and they need to have preventative measures. Like just 100%, that should be one of the most important aspects of their training program, whatever they're doing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like recovery and treatment are huge, and that really brings up one of the things that I have a concern with in youth athletics and adolescent athletics across the board is there's a huge disparity in the level of athletic training that a school can provide.
Just like different differences, right?
Yeah, like my high school, we had like one whirlpool, and I think it was from like the 80s, and it had dust like 3 inches high on it. Like no one ever touched it, and our athletic trainer was like on retainer from a physical therapy place in the town over. So, and we only had one, and we had any given season we had like 5 or 6 teams playing. So he had to be at the football practice. He also had to be at the soccer practice. He had to be at the field hockey practice. He had to be for soccer, and he had to be on the girls and the boys, and then he had to be at the cross country. He had all these things that he had to juggle, and it was only one guy, and that's really not beneficial. Like I guess he was really only there as a reactionary response versus a preventative, because he was only really there to take care of people when they rolled their ankle or hurt themselves, or God forbid they broke a bone or something like that.
Sounds like that's all he had time for.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not putting it on him or, anyone.
Yeah.
It's more like it's on the school, because they didn't view that as something that's important, but they played such an emphasis on the success of our sports team and how important it is to participate in those sports. And yet they didn't do their homework and have enough of a support staff for those sports.
That's definitely something that should change as the world moves forward in life. I think it's probably changing for the better. The more research that's done, and the more people grow.
And I totally agree with that. And I think a good way to help with that, if necessarily, not necessarily, like if a school couldn't afford more than one athletic trainer, or they couldn't afford a suitable athletic training room with all the bells and whistles, or even just the right tools to get the job done, reaching out to, school boards and, school districts, and talking about the curriculum that's in the physical education programs, because a lot of these injuries could be prevented if the kids were taught proper movement styles and abilities, and they actually were taken into the weight room in gym class and shown how to do these things from a licensed professional, like a teacher that has, the proper education in strength and conditioning and preventative injury and stuff like that, because they're there every day. Kids, as we all know, because we were all in school at one point, whether it's public, private, or home. I mean, homeschool doesn't really have that, but obviously, but you're there every day. So why not make the most out of your physical education class instead of playing kickball, 5 days a week?
Right. I mean, do you feel like gym class right now is it's unfortunate, but it's almost like a waste. Like there's a lot more that they could be doing for sure. Kids just end up dreading it because a lot of times it's mostly just like running and I can just think of like the stereotypical slightly overweight gym teacher that just got like that got a physical education degree. It's not always like that, but just like when I was younger, I just hated doing gym class because like the only people that were good at it were the high school athletes, and the others weren't really given the different or the varied movements and the varied exercises and things that were more suitable for their level.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I think there's multiple reasons for that. Of the one glaring one is obviously a lot of schools have shifted their focus into education, which obviously as they should, but like mental, like rather, so they're doing like STEM, like science, technology, engineering, and math, which are extremely important things. I'm not saying that they shouldn't focus on these things. However, they're really neglecting how physical education can benefit those other fields. Like if a kid is healthy, physically healthy, and they're, exercising, there's a lot of studies and research that shows like people who are active and physically active, their brain functions at a higher level because they're getting all of life's experiences, and their body functions better because there's a lot of endorphins and positive benefits that are acquired through physical education or physical activity, which you could get through physical education.
Exactly. It's like, I don't know, needs work, but as I mentioned, they're working on it. So that's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think they're really missing the whole education part of the physical education in like the way that PEs run in our country today, at least.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're more focused on like games and playing kickball and all these games, which are great, but they're not reinforcing the proper movements and stuff like that. So kids end up just learning the wrong way to do a lot of movements, and they end up hurting themselves, and then they end up having to go to physical therapy, 10 years later, because they've been doing the same thing the wrong way for the last 10 years.
Crazy. Yeah, I wanted to bring up one more point about the stigma. Talking about getting a little bit more about the children in weightlifting stigma.
Yeah, sure.
Because I saw a study that was kind of talking about how children can improve their strength by 30 to 50% just after age 12 weeks of a well-designed strength training program, and they don't need to go off more than twice a week, honestly, to maintain their strength. But people talking about like injury and damaging of the growth plate, stuff like that only happens, if that happens, right, it's only because of like misuse of equipment or inappropriate amounts of weights. and improper technique. And that just reinforces the point that I made earlier about how there's a big need for like trained fitness professionals. So perhaps more fitness professionals should step into those roles as gym teachers for schools.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there needs to be more of an emphasis on physical education, like those teachers continuing their education and learning as their teachers as well, and even having a higher level of education before they even go into the career. Because as you know, like in our future career, we're going to be required to continuously, renew our education and go in terms of licensing, but we have to go to these, conferences and take these other classes and really kind of keep up to date in the way the physical world is, like the physical movement and fitness world is changing, because we're constantly doing research, which I love. There's research going on all the time. Like understanding our bodies is a paramount like goal that we should reach as a species. So I think I totally agree with you on that. There needs to be more of an emphasis on these teachers getting a better education themselves, and like being more prepared and willing to educate the youth, and so that way we have a healthier society.
Absolutely. I'm curious to see how everything is going to move forward into the future of like obviously like there's people that are bringing like the fitness industry forward with different, like the development of different kinds of equipment, and what you're starting to see is more of like condensing. So like they're making something that was kind of complicated before not that complicated, or combining a few different concepts together for a piece of equipment. I think that's important, but I'm just curious to see. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, and honestly, I think the more research and knowledge we gain in this category, the more I see fitness equipment and fitness techniques and programs going back more towards the basics. Actually, like there's more of a shift back to free weights and body weight exercises, and being able to control your body weight. And it used to be like, oh, I can leg press 1,000 pounds, which is, a feat on its own. Don't get me wrong. Like that's rather impressive, but I want to see someone do that and apply it to, jumping or doing any other movement that would benefit from a leg press. And so you see a lot more people doing like single leg squats and free weight squats and with kettlebells or dumbbells or barbells. And I think there's more of an emphasis today, like on core strength, which is like, back in Tyson's day and Muhammad's day, you see these guys with these like they're top heavy and they're walking around like that, they're looking for the gun show, they got their biceps out, they're ready to go. And
they got the power gut, the jelly belly.
Yeah, like
the steroid belly.
Yeah. And it's just, you got to keep that stuff tight. You got to keep it, but also mobile. There's, a lot of research on like posterior chains and the chains in your joints, like having like a mobile ankle, a stable knee, and a mobile hip, and a stable back. And
yeah, exactly. But also like the spine, like another obviously, sorry, I'm playing with something and I dropped it. Like we can take this to like the levels of core strength that athletes should be developing as well, but like your spine and stuff, like obviously you need to use the muscles of your abs and just kind of your lower back to stabilize the spine, but it should be able to flex and extend to a certain point where stability isn't compromised, but it's still moving. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
My
thoughts on that is like it also depends on the situation you're in. Like sometimes you'll need a sturdy ankle but have like a mobile knee and functional movement in life, and like you'll need a sturdy hip and a mobile back. Like but the thing is they need to alternate in a way that is keeping stability, but also allowing for proper mobility and, the task that you're trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. Core is important for anti-flexion, anti-extension, and anti-rotation.
Yeah.
That's the big three.
Yep. And it takes a huge, exactly. And it also, like, if you have a strong core, it really lowers the percentage of like risk for a back injury because you're having some anterior stability that takes off of the stress load for that posterior area in your back.
Yes, sir. Do you think we can kind of break down a lot of this into like solid skills that middle school and high school athletes, since this is kind of the central portion of our conversation, important skills that they should have that will make them successful in college? I think starting with the core stability and the education, and then also injury prevention. Those would be, and the education goes along with that. But those I feel like would be severely important, just to be educated on what they could do to hurt themselves and what they could do to help themselves now, so they don't get hurt.
Yeah.
Also develop like the development of strength. And what were you gonna say?
Yeah, so I totally agree. And with the development of strength, like the focus should be more at least at that age group, like the focus should be on like applying that strength to functional movements rather than like strict like single plane movements that, that's the traditional, like, oh, you need to bench press more so you can, block better in football, or you need to squat more so you can jump higher. Like, yeah, those are important, but you also need to add a functional component to the training. And I also think that there needs to be a heavy stress on the importance of playing multiple sports even as young as, like when I was 6, I only played football, and I really wish I had played other sports, because you really learn a whole lot of different life skills and things like that. And I think the younger you start, like teaching them how to be more of a well-rounded rather than specializing in one specific category, is where you get the maximum amount of benefit and potential. And I also think when you're doing that at a young age, like sports are great, but you also need to let these kids like just play, like just let them go out and it's called like free play, like go out and play tag, run through the woods, climb trees safely. Of course, we don't want any kids falling out of trees, but
no, that would be bad.
These movements teach the kids, like it like helps reinforce like neurotransmitters and neuromuscular coordination, and also it helps like develop accessory muscles that a lot of times people forget about in these big lifts like bench, squat, and deadlift and things of that nature.
Yes, sir. Crazy stuff.
For sure, man.
Very, very good conversation that we had here today.
Yeah, I think it was a good one.
Really appreciate you coming on, man. We'll do this again for sure.
For sure. And we'll definitely have some more topics to cover, considering the more we're learning at our shared school, and also the way life goes through and our personal habits of physical fitness.
Yes, we're just about coming to the close of the semester. Seems like there's little stuff that's going wrong here and there just because of COVID and all that. So it's easy to get sidetracked in that. But this next semester coming up is probably going to be pretty serious. So it's good to know that I have your back. And
I got your back. We're going to take this together.
We'll take it through to the end.
For sure.
And I will publish my comedy screenplay.
Yeah, man.
About the care settings and physical therapy. That'll be fun.
For sure, man. And if you need a If you need a guide on that or a little input, I'll be around. I know a thing or two about those care settings and how interesting they can be, to say the least.
So interesting. Our teachers, our teachers are very good at giving. All jokes aside, they're really good at giving us all of everything that we need. Everything.
Yeah, they don't sugarcoat it either. They tell you how it is. They're a good batch of people, and I'm glad that I'm learning from people that have had some real world experience.
Yeah, it's getting me excited about future career and what part I'll be able to play in that. So it's really cool.
For sure, dude. I totally agree.
All right. This has been Sets and Reps. I regret to inform you that we are signing off, but thank you for coming in. Thank you for tuning in, listening to me and this man talk, chill, kick it back for a little bit. Ryan, it was a pleasure having you, dude.
Of course, man. I'll definitely be seeing you real soon.
Be seeing you around. All right, you take care now.
Peace out, man.